Hi, it's Terry Roberts back again with Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. And this morning we are so lucky to have Bill Carrick, one of the most widely respected media strategists in the country. And we're going to be talking about the Democratic National Convention. Bill, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. So you and I have been to a lot of conventions, none of them like this one. The cliche already on the unconventional convention, but it was really historic. I mean, this is the first time there was ever such a thing. So, just in terms of the production and the way it went, what was your takeaway as a professional media communications person?
Well, let me start with, I was dubious about all this at the beginning. I just said, oh my God, what's going to happen? And, I actually thought it was pretty good. I thought there were a couple of elements to it that were surprising. One of it was, other than the featured players, everybody was on for, 2 minutes or something, and it was moving. It was, the thing had a pace to it, and it wasn't boring. And I thought the mixture of, the featured players, Bernie, and then Michelle Obama, and then Kasich, and the Republican women, Meg and Susan Molinari, and Governor Whitman. All that was really good. I thought it was all very good. And, they mixed it up pretty good. And the real people stuff was really good. I thought that young woman from Arizona about her father
She was,
had
yeah.
one condition, and that was trusting Trump. That was just a heartbreaker.
Yeah, they already got an ad up with her with some of that. So it seemed there was 2 hours of it, and I guess the CNN and all the cable, I don't know what Fox did, but MSNBC went with the whole 2 hours. And then the second hour, I think the Nets broadcast that. But the first hour, some people were comparing it to, a telethon. And it seemed like it's a lot of the stuff that guys like you tend to make, these pre-prepared videos that get played at conventions normally that nobody's paying any attention to and watching. And then the second was sort of the featured players. Who do you think the audience was for that? Was it just Democrats to try to get the vote out, or was it people they were trying to convince who were, can't decide?
I think if we were looking at this in pre-pandemic terms, we'd say only people can watch it are, Democrats this week, Republicans next week. But post-pandemic, it's not, if we'll watch golf without fans, or baseball or basketball without fans, this may be a great break from that, right? We're actually really talking to real people. It's not just the occasional 4-letter expletive by a ball player. Yeah. It had a little bit more liveliness to it.
Yeah.
At least in video terms.
I wonder I haven't seen anything about ratings or how many people watched or anything like that.
I haven't seen anything yet. It'll be.
It's fascinating. I wonder if it's more or less that would watch. Because conventions have been basically, commercials anyway for a long time. So it was a little bit different. Let's talk about that woman from Arizona, and I'm sorry I don't have her name here, but it was such a powerful thing. It was only like 2 minutes, but she talked about, her dad's pre-existing condition was believing Trump. Extraordinarily strong.
Powerful. And she was very passionate, and she kept her composure extremely well. And, she was really emotional without breaking down or something. I thought that was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And I thought another piece that was interesting, it didn't have the same gut-wrenching emotional impact. You and I and all the insiders know all the story about Joe taking Amtrak from Washington back home to Wilmington every night. But the way they did it with the conductor is the narrator talking about it. That was pretty good stuff. It was like, and you think about it, that was before he and Jill were married that he started doing that. And he was like, he left went down to Union Station and got on the train, went home to Wilmington every night.
What do you think that the basic message they were trying to communicate? I mean, there was a fair amount of Trump bashing, but it was still, at a fairly respectful level. But, what I kept hearing, Joe is a decent guy. It was kind of like decency versus Trump. Do you think that was what they were trying to get at?
I think so. I think they were making that contrast, and people who knew him well, the Jim Clyburns and John Kasich's of the world, but he gave great testimonials about who he is as a human being and a person. I thought Kasich was very effective.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, the AOC and some of the Bernie-crats in the Democratic Party were unhappy with the fact that they invited Kasich, the former congressman who actually ran against Trump 4 years ago, Republican, and as you say, a series of Republican women, Meg Whitman, Christy Todd Whitman, and Susan Molinari. But, it kind of went to Biden's whole message of, look, I'm a uniter. I'm someone who will bring everyone together. How do you think it played in the party, though?
I thought pretty good. I thought that the guy who gave it the ultimate blessing was Bernie Sanders. He started talking about, I work with, progressives, I work with moderates, and I even work with conservatives. I mean, he sort of alluded to it in a way that sort of gave it some approval, which I thought was an interesting, who knew Bernie was a team player? It was
that was extraordinary. That was, and the sequence of going from Kasich to Bernie was, I thought there was one bump there because Kasich said, some people, and he just took it on. He said, some people say, don't do this because Bernie, Biden's going to be captured by the left effectively. And then the next thing you see is Bernie Sanders. So, I mean, what was that a mistake in the messaging there?
Oh, I thought it was good. And I thought that the one thing that is sort of clicks with the Bernie Biden relationship is actually real. And Bernie, even to the point where he's saying, we have some differences on healthcare, but let me tell you, he's got a great plan compared to what we got, and it'll do a lot of good. I thought Bernie was pretty effective last night.
What'd you think of Bernie's room raider with the cut wood behind him?
That's that Vermont thing that he.
We're sitting here in 95 degrees, and Bernie's gonna build a fire.
We're all getting, toasted.
Yeah. And then
that's always interesting to see where everybody what their context is in the room.
Well, I thought that was the Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, was kind of standing in a podium in a very formal setting. I didn't think that played very well. I don't know.
Well, yeah, as we all know, live TV is an adventure. And some of this stuff, does not, like Jim Clyburn had a false start at the beginning at his thing. I'm sure it was somebody blew the cue or whatever. And there were some camera shots I could have done without. Jim Clyburn from a side angle to start with, John Kasich from overhead to start with, to show us that he's at the crossroads. I mean, there was some stuff that was a little.
Yeah, the crossroads was a little hokey, but tell us, just from a sort of a professional craft perspective, how complicated is it to put something like that together? I mean,
enormously complicated because, when you got into those things where you were doing 6 or 9 people, or in some of those boxes, there were like, 30 people in them. That's a lot of coordinating because you got the simplicity of it sounds great, but you still got to get all those people on the phone. You got to be on at this time, and all that uh, pre-production work is really painstaking details.
So what kind of crew would you have to need? Would you need to?
They probably had every kind of crew on there imaginable. They probably had people out there, obviously shooting cases outside in the scene, probably Ohio, and then you had people, in their homes, and you had, all kinds of different settings, and plus that the musical tribute
Right.
with the John Prine, the unreleased album before he hadn't released it when he died.
Yeah.
So then you had the John Prine soon to be released album with the major song on it, and that's going over the memoriam to the people with the COVID-19 victims. That was really powerful.
Yeah, the hit that Trump and the Republicans are putting on it is, it was boring. It was a snooze fest. And, obviously without a live audience, it's not going to be the same. But I actually thought that tone was appropriate. I mean, for the times.
I do too. I mean, if Trump's going to come in and, have, he thinks he's going to have a blowout thing with him throwing, mud at the screen for 3 hours a night, I ain't gonna work. They better figure out what their programming is. And it's got to be something that's not Trumpian, or they're going to have a bad week.
Well, it's interesting because Biden's guys have been working on this since April, as I read somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure
Trump, go ahead.
I'm sure that's very true, because the detailed work involved is very intense.
And Trump, until a couple of weeks ago, was still trying to have a live convention. And now I guess he's going to give his address from the lawn of the White House, which is okay. Just another norm shattered and thrown out for.
Yeah, another norm shattered. And plus a reminder, oh my God, he's president. That doesn't seem to be like that. I mean, the whole thing about him being the outsider is going to shake things up. Now he's an insider who's destroying everything, and he's playing into the insider thing.
Yeah, and the other thing I wondered about, though, apparently Trump is going to be on every night
I don't like that. The one thing I thought about last night at the conclusion, as you and I know from too many conventions, Monday night is usually a snoozer in these conventions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not like, it's kind of like, can we get to the bar? That's kind of the feeling you have about Monday night at most of at the old school conventions. Last night was pretty good. You got to keep this up now for 3 more nights.
For 3 more nights. Obviously, the headline speaker was Michelle Obama. She had recorded it earlier, but it was pretty good.
It was very good. It was very good. She set such an incredible tone, and she, unlike the people who are, giving a speech to the camera, she's like having a conversation with, and it feels very intimate. It feels like she's talking to you. She's just really awesome.
Yeah.
And she has the moral standing to talk about these issues and how the country's been turned inside out. She's a powerful, powerful voice.
Yeah, it was. She really, in terms of the medium, just from a technical standpoint, being able to use that as effectively as she did, it's not an easy thing. So,
Trump is not up to this moment line.
Yeah.
Was, subtle, but really powerful.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. She just nailed it. And I thought that was good. I think the other thing she did, she talked about not just Barack Obama's relationship to Joe Biden. She talked about hers, which I thought that was pretty compelling.
But did you think there was enough Biden in it? He had that one kind of awkward thing where he was asking people, you know, the mayor
Yeah.
of Chicago and others, and you saw him on the train and stuff. But do you think there was enough definition of him?
I think they did pretty good. For night one, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. I think they got a lot of work to do the next 3 nights.
Because, you know, even though
There were some things like, Jim Clyburn repeated that fabulous line about, we know Joe Biden, but more importantly, Joe Biden knows us. I mean, everybody didn't hear that in the campaign context. There was some stuff that was pretty powerful.
because in a sense, I mean, Trump just went up with a big ad buy, you know, going to Joe's senile or he's lost it or whatever it is message that they're putting on. And even though everybody says, oh, everybody knows Joe Biden, to a large extent, I don't think that's necessarily true for voters. I mean, I think there is a lot to be filled in. So how do you?
Yeah, like the human being Joe Biden, there's a lot that people, don't really have a lot of awareness about.
So how would you sequence out the next 3 nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? How does that work?
Well, I think President Obama will have a powerful.
He's tonight, Tuesday night.
He's not tonight. That's President
Clinton.
President Clinton and Joe Biden tonight. But Wednesday night is President Obama, I think, right?
So what does Biden need to do with his speech? Because, Michelle, Barack Obama, there'll be others, and he's going to have to then come on and close the thing. How does he do that? I mean, with a stem winder, is he still going to be in his basement? I mean, what would you advise in terms of the tone?
I don't think I think that it has to be part like, okay, this is an indictment of this guy. There's got to be a part of that, but he's got to tell people what he's going to do, and he's got to tell them what values and philosophy he's going to bring to this. I think he's got quite a burden on him to give really a great speach.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to raise expectations, but I think he's going to have to give a really good speech. And of course, I don't know that any of this stuff Trump's doing is credible about he's slipping and all that, because an obese guy with orange hair that can't control his mouth is not exactly going to be an expert on mental health anytime soon.
There is that. Let's talk about Kamala Harris. You have run campaigns against her, and
just one.
Just one. That's right. Loretta Sanchez for Senate in what was it, 2016, 2018? 20. Here in California, we know her, and we know she's got some liabilities. Do you think that was a smart pick by Biden?
I think at the end of the whole process, it was obvious that she was the most logical choice. I mean, there were some, built-in limitations Biden placed on himself, a woman of color, and I thought once you got to that point, she had the most experience in a variety of fields, both as a DA, Attorney General, and as a U.S. Senator. I didn't think he got, and she had been vetted in the public arena, not just like, in the Oppo research room. She had been public, and she had been vetted in the public arena. I thought she was the smartest choice. I didn't think there was, there wasn't, you can't go into this finding out stuff as you're going, about somebody, and Biden is comfortable with her and likes her, and he valued so much valued his relationship with Obama, and he was looking for a vice president who would work with him and he could trust, and I think he concluded she was the best one.
Yeah.
The politics of this, as we know, we've been through this a bunch. The politics of this are get murky because, you know, okay, we all start with Lyndon Johnson and Boston to Austin access and got Texas, and that's how he won the presidency. And that was a hell of a long time ago. And since then, we haven't had anybody that showed the capacity to bring a state with them that you weren't going to get anyway.
Right. And the basic rule, or the first rule, is do no harm. So you think he's done no harm with Kamala?
No, none, no harm at all. And the fact that she had been a presidential candidate is a big plus in that regard, because she's been examined. Everybody's kicked the tires. They know all this stuff about her. You know, I thought, like, you know, there was this drumbeat, as you and I both heard plenty of, well, you know, you got to look into her record, and she did this and she did that, and you know, by the time we got through this process, everybody, you know, particularly in the news media, everybody heard all that stuff multiple times, and it got sort of so what, you know, that element to it. And I think she got beyond that before she even got picked.
You know, one of the things that did surprise me was, particularly in the first half hour, was how tightly the convention tied itself to Black Lives Matter, tied Biden to Black Lives Matter, and there was a lot of that, and it just seemed to me to sort of raise the defund the police question. There was a quote from Biden who said, you know, most police officers are good. A few of them are bad. We got to get rid of them, which is kind of at odds with the defund the police thing. Do you think that they created a problem for themselves by associating too tightly with that?
You know, I think the truth is we're in a different place than we were. You know, that Trump is such a creature of the past. He goes back and Nixon and Law and Order, and we're going to do this, and we're going to tell everybody that Biden wants to get rid of the police, and you know, all this nonsense that's going on. The problem, the big problem is, we know now, and it's mostly because of the access that people continually have to video. I mean, we know that those two guys hunted the African-American Aubrey down in a pickup truck. We know they had their foot on George Floyd's neck. We know, you know, we can see it with our own eyes. I think we're in a different world now. It's not 1968, and Trump and his people don't seem to understand it. I mean, they're way too dependent on this whole theory that we're going to make Joe Biden into George McGovern, that he's too far left. I don't think anybody buys any of that. It's stale campaign from 30 years ago.
Yeah. So last question. So what's your analysis of the state of play? It looks like it's Biden's to lose. Do you think he's capable of that? I mean, how do you think this goes? Can Trump win?
You know, I think you can't say he can't win. I mean, you know, obviously we looked at the Electoral College for a long time now, and there's a sort of built-in conservative bias into our presidential elections because, you know, the Republicans pick up a whole lot of states without doing anything. And so the math of that gets pretty complicated. Now, the end result of that is we've had two Republican presidents who got elected not as the choice of a majority of the American.
You're losing the popular
majority Electoral College. One of them a pretty decent guy, and another one this guy. But it's you can't say it's not going to happen. I think the one thing that if the Trump people, they got to fix. You look at these numbers, not the head-to-head, but 50% of the voters indict him on every front. You know, favorability is, you know, unfavorable is 50 plus, on the issues, COVID, everything except the economy. He's underwater with over a majority of all the voters saying, having negative feelings about him. On all the critical things, with that one solitary exception is the economy, which, the market, because it's bets on the future and not on the present, gives him this shelter with some voters. Well, the market hasn't really collapsed. It's still going up. We're setting records, and NASDAQ and the S&P, all those things that are going on. But, that doesn't really have much to do with most people, and particularly most swing voters. I also think the other thing is we know, you and I know the old saying that news goes east to west and ideas travel west to east. What we saw in 2018, the Democratic sweep in Orange County, picking up congressional seats in otherwise very conservative East LA County and the Central Valley. We won districts we've been trying to get competitive in, not win. We've been trying to be competitive in for 30 years, and we won them. And we look at it, and it's like suburban women are a big deal in this, and he has done nothing but alienate himself from a very critical constituency. And I don't know how he's going to solve that problem. That trio of Meg Whitman, who was the Republican nominee for governor here in 2010 and a very successful chief executive, Susan Molinari, who was a Republican whip in the House.
Yeah, she gave the keynote
She gave the keynote, was very close personally to the Bush family. And Chrissy Todd Whitman, who won, New Jersey has those odd year elections. She won one of those things that were highlighted elections because it was an odd year, and had 2 terms as governor and served in the cabinet. But they're all they are those women who swung in our direction in 2018. And if he doesn't solve that problem, he's going to lose. Now, if he's going to have another problem, a lot of Democrats, whether they're African American, Latino, millennial, Asian, they're going to come out in droves. That was part of the messaging I thought with Michelle Obama was very powerful last night, which was like, all of you didn't vote last time, you got to vote. And if you can't vote by mail, go vote in person. I mean, she had a very powerful little piece there that would a lot of people had.
It was so layered. I mean, she had so many different things going on.
Different things. And another thing, I thought some of the real people stuff, particularly after we had Kasich and Meg and Whitman and Molinari, then we went to the real Republicans, who all very succinctly explained why they weren't going to vote. They voted for Trump last time, and they ain't voting for him now, and why. And they all did it. And, I mean, that was a pretty good piece of programming when they all were able to do it within, 30 seconds, a minute. They all got their story out, and they were all powerful. And they all, as you looked at them, you said, oh, I know that guy, or I went to school with that guy. They were real people.
Yeah,
real
Republican voters against Trump is really pumping it.
It's really it's a big problem, and it wasn't all our friends, Steve Schmidt, Mike Murphy, Tim Miller, Stewart Stevens. It wasn't those people, professional Republicans, who are appalled at Trump for all kinds of reasons, political reasons as well as philosophical. But these people were like real people.
Yeah,
these are Republicans.
Hey, one quick thing. Kamala getting the vice presidential thing kind of screws Prince Gavin, our governor, who had his own aspirations nationally. I mean, get in line for 12 years if Biden wins. I mean, he's
know, a lot of smarty pants will say, well, you know, the vice president doesn't always, you know, succeed the president, blah, blah, blah. They're usually pretty competitive. I mean, they get a shot at it. You know, Al Gore had a shot. He got a majority of the voters. I mean, you know, vice presidents get a shot. There's no doubt about that. So she's the head of a line here for a whole generation.
I mean, the backstory
Not here though, but all over the country. You know, she's cutting line, and it's going to be hard to get ahead of her now.
Yeah, the backstory on that's so interesting because they both came up, Newsom and Harris, in San Francisco politics, and they had the same consultants. And when Barbara Boxer decided not to run again, it was like they were going to divide up the world, and Kamala made the right.
And ambitious people bump into each other sooner or later, no matter how friendly or what the, you know, partnership or coalition is. You know, ambitious people, they bump into each other. And we got, and it's not just those two. We got basically a small army of people here who are now trying to figure out, what does this mean to me?
Well, yeah. And the first thing they're going to ask is, what's your client, Senator Feinstein, going to be doing at the age of 91? You know, I keep reading, George Skelton wrote yesterday, no, she'll probably retire. I'm like, you're out of your mind. He's never going to retire. It's the Strom Thurmond thing. Forget it. So, hey, Bill.
Yeah, there was you know, there's the other piece of that, the thing with Diane guessing about, you know, the other one that's about twice a month, I get a call from some reporter saying, well, I hear that she's going to retire after this election. And I say, what are you smoking? What is the deal with you?
Who are you hearing this from?
Who are you hearing this from? It's silly speculation. It just really is silly.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that Gavin, when he makes his decision, I think the point that a lot of people have made is unlikely he's going to be the guy who subtracts the number of women by one in the U.S. Senate. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, more so than Gavin, and you know, it's going to be tough for him to pick a male to replace.
Right, because if Biden and Harris get elected, then it's not a special election. He gets the appointment.
He appoints them in, you know, and of course I hear you know, you get all this stuff like, well, you know, he could appoint himself. I said, yeah, and he could lose like everybody else who appointed himself. Over the years, there's like a string of about 10 of them that, you know, took themselves out of politics by appointing themselves to the Senate.
Or he could appoint his clone like John Seymour.
Yeah, you know, the thing with John was, you know, he was like a great insider in Sacramento. Everybody loved him. He was like one of these, you know, people that put together the deals and got things done. And then he got into the race. Nobody knew who he was. They just knew they didn't know who he was because he had never run statewide before, and he got lost by 16 points.
Yeah, well,
that idea of appointing somebody that you're close to, and you're going to make them, you know, into something. It just, you know, you got to calculate this some other way. Can they keep the seat? That's the first thing.
Yeah. Well, you and I are now so far down the rabbit hole discussing John Seymour.
John Seymour out there, all your viewers are saying, "Oh my God! Not only don't we know who those two are, I'm talking about people we never heard of."
Hey, Bill, thanks a lot for taking the time this morning. Stay safe, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. It's fun.